Voilà, conformément à l'article 100.
Pursuant to Standing Order 1083F, our study on the roadmap and immigration in Francophone minority communities, I'd like to welcome our ministers, Mélanie Joly and Ahmed Hussein. Welcome. So we're going to proceed the way we usually do. You'll have about 7 or 8 minutes each for your presentations, and then we'll go around the table with questions and comments from the members of the committee. So who will begin? Yes, with your permission, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for welcoming me again. I am here with Ahmed Hussein, who is the Minister of Immigration, and with representatives of his department. From my department, there is Hubert Lucier, Assistant Deputy Minister, Citizenship, Heritage and Regions, and Jean-Pierre Ségautier, Director General, Official Languages Branch. We'll be talking about the new action plan for official languages and building new momentum for immigration in Francophone minority communities. This report contained good recommendations on issues like early childhood and highlighted a lack of funding for community organizations. I thank you for your work. We will have a full response when we respond to the action plan on official languages, which will be done at the end of the year.
Government's recent achievements. 2016 was a year of unprecedented consultations. Of course, as you well know, the Official Languages Act requires us to do these consultations, but these were the most open consultations ever in the history of the Official Languages Act. So, of course, we also brought, my team and I, over 100 key organizations representing official languages communities, as well as those active in bilingualism, to update them on the consultations, and that took place in December 2016. It was also a year of action. We granted university accreditation to the Collège Militaire Royal de Saint-Jean. We nominated a qualified bilingual justice from Newfoundland and Labrador to the Supreme Court of Canada. And we supported immigration in official language minority communities through new initiatives. Also, in 2016, last fall, I joined Scott Bryson, which is the president of the Treasury Board, in announcing that our government will review the official languages regulations as they pertain to communications with and service provided to the public in English and French across the country. Maintenant, depuis le début de la nouvelle année, depuis
Since 2017, we've announced the bringing back the Court Challenges program, which has been updated and modernized. We have also a funding of $2.4 million to the Réseau de Développement Économique et d'Employabilité for the creation of a francophone heritage, culture, and tourism corridor as part of Canada 150. And Budget 2017 included $80 million over 10 years toward community educational infrastructure in official language minority communities. It's the first federal contribution in this area, $2 million over 2 years to increase federal courts' ability to render decisions that are available in French and English, and $7.5 million per year ongoing to improve parliamentary translation services. And there will also be a tax credit for those learning French as a second language. We have also added $2.5 million for official languages and for the vitality of official language minority communities. We are also funding the Quebec Saint-Jean-Baptiste and Canada Day and the 150th anniversary of Confederation. I'm working with Minister Duclos on a new agreement on services in French, and I've also worked in collaboration with the 3 territories to come to agreements on services provided in French, and we're putting $3.5 million, which will be available from this year to
issues facing the English-speaking community in Quebec. My department has begun working with the provincial government of Quebec to look at improved ways of supporting the vitality of that important minority language community. Par ailleurs, maintenant le rapport sur nos consultations.
Now the report on our public consultations is online, and I'd like to thank the colleagues who took part in these consultations. I'd also like to address those members of the community who have taken part in consultations. Thank you for your work. It's very highly appreciated. We have a summary of the consultations, but I'd like to mention the priorities that we have singled out, be it the rate of bilingualism in the overall population or the role of early childhood or be it the role of immigration in the vitality of Francophone minority communities, the many community infrastructure needs, and the services often provided by provinces and territories. And also the importance of ongoing media in the second official language. And the importance of school boards in official language minority communities. And it's important that they work with the ministers of education and through separate consultations.
Our government has decided to play a bigger leadership role on official languages after 10 years of inaction. Liberal governments have a strong history of taking concrete measures on official languages. Maybe the Manitoba Schools Act, the Official Language Act, the Charter, and the Plan Dion. We will be putting forward in the coming months a new action plan on official languages that has been drawn from extensive conversation and dialogue with stakeholders and communities. In it, we will recommit to 3 important roles in the federal government in official languages. First, increasing bilingualism. Our 2 official languages are at the heart of who we are as a country. They are central to our identity and key for our future. Le deuxième axe, c'est bien entendu la vitalité des communautés linguistiques en situation.
The second is the vitality of Francophone and Anglophone communities. We want to make sure that of maintaining the vitality of Anglophone minority communities in Quebec and Francophone communities outside. We also want to be a government that sets an example and shows a clear path forward. The current roadmap for Canada's official languages will end on March 31st, 2018, and our new action plan will be in effect the following day. We will have many opportunities to work together, and it will be my pleasure to answer your questions. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Minister. We will now go to the remarks of the Honourable Ahmed Hussen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to begin by acknowledging the work of my colleague Mélanie Joly, the Minister of Canadian Heritage, on the official languages file. I would also like to acknowledge the tireless efforts of my colleague Mr. Serge Cormier, my Parliamentary Secretary, who is also a huge champion of Francophone immigration.
Hard work in preparing the report towards a new action plan for official languages and building new momentum for immigration in Francophone minority communities. Mon discours d'aujourd'hui portera sur.
The focus of my remarks today will be on the government response to that report and the ways that Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada is working to improve immigration to Francophone communities.
The lingual nature of our country strengthens both our economy and society. And our government wants Canada's Francophone communities to continue to thrive all across the country. À cette fin, nous pensons que
To that end, we believe immigration has an important role to play in the future of Canada's Francophone minority communities.
to meet our target for Francophone economic immigration outside of Quebec, which is 4% of economic immigrants by 2018. Mr. President, let me stop here and say that as a priority for me, not only do I seek to meet this goal, but I'm encouraging my department to exceed this goal. While we're not meeting that target currently, we have undertaken a number of initiatives to increase Francophone immigration outside of Quebec. Par exemple, Immigration, Réfugiés.
For instance, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada regularly promotes Francophone minority communities for French-speaking foreign nationals in Canada and abroad. Our missions encourage French-speaking foreign nationals interested in immigrating to Canada to consider Francophone communities outside Quebec.
16, Mobilité Francophone, which is a new stream of the International Mobility Program. This stream exempts employers from the labor market impact assessment process when they hire French-speaking workers on a temporary basis in managerial, professional, and skilled trade occupations from abroad to work in Francophone communities outside of Quebec. This is a really important initiative. Il sera ainsi plus facile pour
This makes it easier for employers to efficiently recruit French-speaking foreign workers to highly skilled jobs on a temporary basis. We know that many successful permanent resident applicants start out as temporary workers in Canada. So it is incumbent on employers, communities, and governments to work closely together to ensure that the new Mobilité Francophone stream is used effectively.
The retention of new French-speaking workers in Francophone communities outside of Quebec and all over the country. We also know that students are another important group who may want to make the transition to permanent residency, and whose retention would significantly help Francophone communities across Canada. Graduates of colleges and universities in Francophone communities have created networks, improved their language skills, and built community ties. Temporary workers and students are just some of those who will benefit from the recent changes, Mr. President, that we made to the express entry system that can help French-speaking candidates increase their chances of being invited to apply. These changes include awarding additional points to certain former international students to Canada, rebalancing the system by reducing points for a valid job offer, and introducing some exemptions from the required labor market impact assessment to support a job offer, including an exemption linked to Mobilité Francophone work permits. And as of last week, on June 6th, we are now awarding additional points to express entry applicants who have strong French language skills, and even more points to express entry applicants who have strong French language skills and some command of English. À 2016, 2.9%.
In 2016, 2.9% of all immigrants admitted to Canada under express entry were French speakers.
Will strongly benefit French-speaking immigration candidates who will be well ranked in the express entry pool. J'encourage donc les employeurs
And I encourage employers in Francophone communities to hire candidates who are in the pool to ensure that Francophone candidates do move to their communities.
Pilot program. This is a 3-year program that, while it's not specifically designed to attract French-speaking immigrants, this program has great potential to help Francophone communities in Atlantic Canada attract newcomers. A distinguishing feature of this pilot is that this is the first immigration program in Canadian history that is led by employers. And employers, in partnership with the federal, provincial government and municipal government and immigrant settlement service providers, work strongly on the retention, not only on the attraction, but on the retention of newcomer employers, newcomer employees, and their families. It does so by, for the first time, having the employer get involved in the resettlement of not only the skilled immigrant, but their family. And hopefully this will lead to more retention of skilled immigrants into Francophone communities in Atlantic Canada. The Atlantic program offers priority processing for permanent residence applications and does not require employers to get an LMIA for job offers offered to skilled workers or international graduates under these new pilot programs. So in exchange for the employer helping the skilled immigrant and their family to have a settlement plan and retain them and create a more welcoming environment, in exchange for that, the federal government exempts these designated employers from seeking a labor market impact assessment, which sometimes can be onerous and take a long time. This program draws on the enhanced coordination to identify labor market needs and to endorse candidates that meet those needs. So this is a program that is specifically designed to meet the demographic and labor market challenges for Atlantic Canada, and definitely will also benefit Francophone communities in Atlantic Canada. Every principal applicant will arrive in Atlantic Canada with a job offer and an individualized settlement plan for themselves and their accompanying family members, which will connect them to settlement services to support in their successful integration and retention within Atlantic Canada. Again, while this is not specifically designed for French-speaking newcomers, it does present an opportunity for the Atlantic provinces to work with their employers to bring in and retain French-speaking newcomers. This fall, we also plan to implement another change that will help us increase our promotional efforts by sending targeted messages to French-speaking candidates in the express entry pool. And we're also exploring how we can share that profile of these successful applicants with our provincial colleagues so that they can attract these individuals to vibrant and well-placed Francophone communities in provincial jurisdiction. These messages would inform potential candidates about the possibility of living in a French community outside of Quebec and the services that are available to them for their integration, settlement, and success in Canada. This last point is extremely important because in attracting more French language speaking newcomers to Francophone communities, it is important for them to know that they will have the necessary supports that they need in order to establish themselves. It is an area of settlement that we rely strongly on partnerships and collaborations. Nous pourrons y arriver notamment grâce à l'excellent travail des 14 réseaux en immigration francophone qui reçoivent des subventions d'IRCC. In collaboration with local and regional partners, the Réseau en Immigration Francophone have mobilized community players and governments, leading to better quality services for French-speaking newcomers. We're also testing a new pilot service called Arrimage Francophone through our settlement program. This service
will help create strong ties between French-speaking immigrants and the local and regional Francophone communities.
Services to French-speaking immigrants or linking them to other integration services offered in the community.
This type of collaboration is increasingly important to us as we work hard to reach our targets.
Doing what we can to support Anglophone communities in Quebec. Recently, I, along with Parliamentary Secretary Serge Cormier, traveled to New Brunswick, where we were able to take part in a historic meeting, the first ever in Canadian history meeting between Francophone and immigration, provincial and territorial ministers, and the Federal Minister of Immigration, as well as the Minister of Canadian heritage. J'ai eu de bonnes discussions avec
I had productive discussions with my provincial colleagues who are responsible for immigration and Francophone issues.
with them. I also look forward to continued engagement with our stakeholders on this file, including the Fédération des communautés francophones et acadiennes.
Monsieur le ministre, est-ce que je peux vous demander de conclure parce que le temps...
May I ask you to conclude, given that we will shortly run out of time?
Thank you. En conclusion, Monsieur le Président,
In conclusion, Mr. Chair, I would like to reiterate our government's commitment to enhancing and promoting the vitality of Francophone minority communities outside of Quebec. Thank you again for inviting me to speak to you today. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Mr. Chair, I would like to make a call to order. A point of order, yes, and allow me to mention to the members of the committee that we will be adding minutes at the end of the question period to ensure that every one of you has a chance to speak fully to your points. We started a little late, so let's add an 8-10 minutes to the end of our meeting to ensure that everyone has enough time as intended to ask questions and receive answers. Thank you. So let's start, and thank you so much for your presentations, ministers. And thank you as well to those who managed to organize having you both appear before us today together. It's not always easy to coordinate our schedules, so thanks to all who ensured that we were able to hear us together here today. Thanks. Let's get going with Ms. Sylvie Boucher. Thank you, honourable ministers, and good day. Welcome to our independent committee on official languages here. I have received, and thank you so much for having provided us with this report. Only an hour ago, though, so unfortunately, I at least haven't had a chance to read it through. It would have been very helpful had we had it a little earlier to be able to look through it and see what's in it. With your permission, I mentioned this because it would have been nice to read it before being here before you. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to. I have a number of questions in mind. The first, something that struck me, Honourable Minister Joly, you mentioned our lack of active intervention for a good decade now, and allow me to say that I can't accept that. We're being televised today, and I'll say that openly. I can't accept it. We were in official languages. I was 10 years ago, and maybe we approached things differently, but we weren't inactive in this area. I've looked at the new action plan for official languages, individual bilingualism, today in 2017. Of course, it's important, especially when you're on the Hill and working in Parliament, and that's a good outlook for all of us. Congratulations. Now, the vitality of Francophone and Anglophone communities and minority conditions, that's also quite valuable, yes. But allow me to say that we have a motion here to ask the Prime Minister to meet with these official language minority communities, and those on the other side of the table certainly vetoed that, blocked us, but it would be very important to encourage such meetings. We are the opposition, but we like to work in a positive way, to support communities in a nonpartisan way. So the government leads by example. Now, official languages, that should have gotten underway by appointing Ms. Meyer. That would have perhaps been a good first step in the government official level. Now, we've met with a number of people here telling us about immigration. Now, there's a structural issue within the communities. When these people appear before us, and if I'm not mistaken, a little bit before or after Christmas, witnesses who came to tell us that in some Francophone communities, there were Anglophone parts of those communities that were receiving funding, rather than it being the Francophone communities that received the funding, and especially as they already had all the community structures set up to receive new immigrants. Could you tell us more about that? Thank you. Thank you, dear colleague. And allow me, by the way, to thank my colleague, Minister Ahmed Hussein, here for having spoken French so well. We can truly see how effective it is to ask for bilingualism here on the Hill. Mr. Hussein is taking intensive French classes right now. I am happy to see that you do have the report in hand. Allow me to remind you that during the last government, when consultations were held, this plan was barely rendered public before the plan was announced. We wanted to provide you with the report ahead of time so that you could study it several months before we actually launch our action plan. As for the new outlook on official languages, over the last years, of course, official languages were siloed in Canadian heritage. We wanted to step out to ensure that official languages be championed across the government. Championed by, for example, accrediting the Military College of Saint-Jean, immigration, and my colleague will certainly speak more to that, infrastructures, 80 million in community infrastructure, justice, the judicial challenge program, and the appointment of judicial candidates at the Supreme Court, and immigration, the Treasury Board, Scott Bryson reviewing and changing that regulation, public security as well, to ensure that the RCMP have bilingual agents on the parliamentary precincts, in the precincts. All of this over 18 months. That's why I am so proud of what we have been able to accomplish over these 18 months. And of course, now that this plan has been announced, the action plan, we will continue to step forward smartly, leading by example, working closely with my colleagues within here, this Committee on Official Languages, since you do such good work here. And now I will ask my colleague to take the floor.
Our department provides funding to 50 Francophone organizations that offers settlement services to French-speaking immigrants and newcomers settling into Francophone minority communities. The question around some of the money going to organizations that may or may not be Francophone in their orientation, the way I'll answer that question is that we have very strict requirements in terms of who we fund for these services, and any organization that we fund has to demonstrate their ability to provide those services to Francophones, and we are very aggressive in tracking the implementation of those funding agreements that we have with the organizations. And if they don't fulfill the services that they're supposed to fulfill to Francophone newcomers, we are able to take action and cut their funding.
Thank you, Minister. Maybe you can complete your answer with another witness, but
sure.
We'll have to go. On doit y aller maintenant avec Paul Lefebvre.
We'll hear from Paul Lefebvre. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, honourable ministers, for being here with us. And as you said, Mr. Chair, it's the right time to congratulate the teams who've ensured that we have you both here before us, two ministers responding to our report. Wonderful. Now, we have been discussing these issues for a number of months now, the official languages and immigration. It's been very important to us to hear from you on this. We have 16 recommendations that we put to you. I would like to speak to two of these for you, honourable ministers. When it comes to immigration, as you know, there is a specific target, linked to official language communities, 4%. 4% is the target. Unfortunately, we never reached that target. And the last study tells us we're at 1.4% only. So may I ask you, well, first, I would like to congratulate you on Mobilité Francophone, this new program that will help, and the extra points being given under the Express Entry framework. We can see where you stand on this, and your presence at the forum in Moncton as well. Excellent. I've heard so many good things about that meeting. But given that we do seem to have some difficulty reaching the 4% target, allow me to say that it might be good to have someone specifically in charge of seeing to it that we reach this 4% target, not just being an internal aim, but that someone who's really someone to be answered to, a deputy minister. I'm not quite sure what level this should be instituted, but given our recommendation, number 15, we want to ensure that both languages are treated equally across Canada. I'd like to hear you on recommendation 15 that we made.
Honourable Member, I would respond by pointing out a number of things. The last analysis that we did on the economic immigration side, the number of francophones through that stream is now as high as 2.9%. So the changes that we keep making to our different programs and the new initiatives that we introduce are actually having an impact, and I'm very proud of that. But we're laser focused on the target, and in fact, I've told my department that we intend to exceed the target. My parliamentary secretary, Serge Cormier, who's here today, has been working aggressively in order to offer suggestions in how we can have more accountability with respect to the target, but also consulting Francophone communities all over the country to make sure that we get their ideas and their feedback in what more we can do. So we've done Mobilité Francophonie, we've done the numerous changes to Express Entry, the Atlantic program, and so on. So, and the promotion, the other remaining piece is more aggressive promotion towards French-speaking newcomers who could potentially add to our skills base as a country. And so, taken all together, you're already starting to see with the stuff that we've implemented an increase, but in order to meet the target, we need to do more, and we're committed to doing more. Okay. And in terms of the accountability piece, we're happy to...
Puis je suis bien d'accord qu'il y a des belles avancées, mais il faut...
I certainly agree that much has been done, but we need to push forward, and perhaps internally something could be done, because to ensure that our minority communities survive and to avoid assimilation, immigration is extremely important, as is early childhood. Early childhood interventions can be very important. Right now, many children, Francophone community, cannot use early childhood schooling, and that's not a good beginning. Recommendation number 9 addresses this. In the next action plan, and with Minister Duclos as well, with regard to infrastructures for early childhood education. That's certainly a lens we recommend, and we unanimously recommend it. So, Honourable Minister Joly, could you please speak to this issue of how important early childhood education is? Well, during our public consultations, we certainly heard that immigration was a very important issue. We also heard that early childhood education is. I would like to thank Sean Casey, my parliamentary secretary, for his hard work on these issues. As for early childhood, we've already made 2 important steps forward in 2017 budget, $80 million over 10 years for community infrastructure, really to support the vitality of official language communities, and for child education spaces, community centers, and we know this will be of great help to these official language minority communities. We're discussing the infrastructure requirements of provinces and territories right now to be able to manage these into the future. This has required a lot of horizontal discussions. I've worked hard with many ministers to ensure that this go ahead. Early childhood education now. As you saw, Mr. Duclos made an important announcement, $7.5 million over 11 years. That was announced this week, and a national framework for early childhood education. Now, that framework provides for interventions that really respect our understanding of how important early childhood education is to push back assimilation, especially in Francophone communities, and to ensure that early childhood education supports the integration of children in these communities. Now that that framework is available, what counts, and I'll be following up closely with Mr. Duclos on this, is to ensure then that all bilateral agreements with provinces include targets Thank you, Madam Minister. On to François Choquette. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to both of you, honourable ministers, for being with us today. And Mr. Lefebvre's question was very important. I didn't quite get the answer. Is it yes or no, Mr. Hussein, will someone be put in charge of Francophone immigration to ensure that the targets be respected? Is it a yes or is it a no?
Letter, and I'm ultimately responsible for achieving that target. Thank you.
Donc, c'est OK. Donc, on comprend que c'est non, malheureux.
All right, so I get that's a no, unfortunately, and that's very unfortunate, especially as a first answer to my questions. Now, Madam Minister, we are in serious trouble. Things aren't going at all as I would hope. Mr. Fraser said in January 2017, I am leaving, I'm pulling out. He said that even earlier. And you have got to come up with an open and transparent process, okay, so you've gotten something underway, to really find the right person to become the new Commissioner for Official Languages. Now, there's a whole debate out there about this. Let's not go over it. We know what it's about. Right now, though, the point is we haven't got one. We haven't got a commissioner. The intermediary person is soon out. So what's the next step? Getting a commissioner. So right now, yes, we have Madame Sekili, and after the 17th of June, when the acting commissioner is no longer the acting commissioner, what happens? I will tell you what the process requires. Yeah, right, but that's like just around the corner, 17th of June. You have heard my response. I will certainly be pleased to tell you more about the process at that point. All right, so I understand that Ms. Sikli, the acting commissioner, will be reappointed. Is that right, for the next 6 months? Is that the right way to go about it? Look, I would like to reassure all members of this committee and everyone in the government that there are a number of initiatives that we have announced and gone forward with over the last 18 months. Now, appointing a Commissioner of Official Languages is one of our aims, based on merit, of course, and an open and transparent process to appoint that person. We will carry through on that, of course, Madame Joly, but the current in-between situation, very unstable, is not a good thing for the Francophone communities across Canada, the official language minority communities, Anglophone communities included. Over the last 6 weeks, we have fought ardently, even here on the Standing Committee on Official Languages, and that's time that we lost, time that we would have otherwise put into finishing our reports on Air Canada, on justice, proper investments for our communities. So that's lost time, and we don't want any more of that. So what is your plan? What is the government's plan? I mean, it's around the corner in 4 days. It's 17th of June. That's like nearly tomorrow. So would you please tell us how we can go ahead so we can stop grumbling about it and infighting? Will we be starting at point zero? Will we just tear everything up, and or will you just take the other 10 people who applied and see who's next on the list? Mr. Choquette, allow me to remind you what the aim of this morning's meeting is, so let's perhaps address that. Well, look, what counts for me is who's in charge in this whole area of official languages. Well, Mr. Choquette, I know a good deal about official languages. I know about what people in my department are doing. I'm very proud of their work. I and everyone working with me and all ministers are in close contact with official language minority communities. I know full well that there's a good deal of concern in the communities, even anxiety after 10 years without much of an action plan in place. We're looking forward to announcing the launch of the action plan for official languages, and I understand your concerns. And if you will, let's allow Mr. Choquette to ask his questions, but also allow the witness to answer. Now, of course, for 10 years, these communities have not seen more investments in their communities, no interest in Francophone in immigration, no investment in it, certainly, and no investment in official language justice services. So allow me to reassure you that, of course, we will have a commissioner for official languages. It's a very important official position, and we will have leadership to ensure that that occurs.
I hope that the next time the Official Languages Act will be complied with and that the leaders of the opposition will be consulted. Well, Mr. Choquette, the Act has always been respected. Yes, but there have been complaints lodged with the Commissioner's Office. Recommendation 10, with respect to immigration, recommends an official immigration policy meant to increase the demographic weight of official language minority communities. Now, we don't have an official policy targeting increasing the demographic weight of official language minority communities. Yes or no?
Policy on that, and I just went through.
C'est la
in my
recommandation
speech.
10 de notre...
That's recommendation 10 of our report. We do not at the present time have an official policy to increase the demographic weight of official language minority communities. It would be a great idea if you could send it to the community so that we could all benefit from it.
My ministry, we do have a policy of increasing French francophone newcomers into Canada by 4.4%, to the target of 4.4% of the total number of economic immigrants settling outside of Quebec by 2018.
Minister, thank you, Mr. Minister. We'll go now with, on va aller avec Darrell Sanson.
Well, I'd like to thank the two ministers and their staff. Mr. Hussein, I'd like to congratulate you for your French. Every time we see one another, we speak French, and it's greatly appreciated. I have a question for you, and I'll also have a question for Minister Choury. I have to say I'm rather astonished. I've been listening, and I'm astonished that this is the first time. It's the first time that there has been a conference on the immigration in the Francophone communities. How do you think that the work you are planning will make a difference? Because we have to make a difference over the next 10 years.
Critical and important for both the ministers of immigration and the ministers of Canadian heritage to work together, because it's not the only way, but one of the most important ways in which we can contribute to the vibrancy and the vitality of Francophone communities outside of Quebec is through immigration. And it not only adds to their vitality, but also to filling the skills shortage, the labor shortage, the demographic decline, as well as the prosperity of those communities. And I'm absolutely committed to making sure that we continue on the good path that we've taken. I'm proud of the fact that Mobilité Francophone is having an impact. I'm proud of the fact that the changes to express entry are already increasing the percentage, as I said, to 2.9%, and will continue to do that. I'm proud of the fact that we're using the Atlantic Immigration Program as one of the options to increase Francophone immigration to Atlantic Canada. And finally, even in our promotional activities, which need to be improved, we will use the department's ability to market Canada to potential skilled immigrants to make sure that there is robust space within there, substantial space to market Canada as a destination for economic immigrants who happen to be francophone.
Merci beaucoup. Très bien. Madame la ministre, deux questions importantes.
Madam Minister, two important questions. I'll ask them together. You know that it's of great concern to me in the caucus with other members. Can you explain the work you do, which is exceptional with respect to the different departments, and they're now talking about their Official Languages Act responsibilities? I think you've been very effective, and it's been very effective with Minister Duclos' announcements and others. Now, we are concerned with this in this committee. Mr. Duclos has made an announcement. How, in our bilateral agreements with provinces, how can we give these groups enough power, because the provinces are responsible for all this, but we have to get the ministers there on the ground to convince the provinces to do their part. Well, it's obvious for us that we want to increase our leadership with respect to official languages. Just last week, I announced over $2 million for youth programs in the official languages sector. The fact that we put $35 million on the table for Nunavut, the Yukon, and the Northwest Territories in order that they improve the services in French. This $35 million for 2016 to 2020 over a period of 3 years. Overall, when I was at my last federal provincial meeting, we clearly wanted to advance the economic support for the communities and support for tourism. They've been talking about Francophone tourism for some years, and it's very important in the tourist corridor. Also, with respect to providing bilingual services, we have a moratorium on the closure of other French or French-speaking and bilingual points of service. We want to ensure that we can have services provided in the language of one's choice and have the service provided by people who are competent and proficient in their languages. Now, I spoke earlier about working with the Minister of Justice on the Court Challenges program, the question of having bilingual Supreme Court justices, the whole issue of immigration. In short, there have been many files I've been working on with my colleagues in order to show leadership and be active and work on the future plan of action. We have something that will go from 2013 to 2018. Thank you, Madam Minister. We're going to have a second round of questions, and everyone will have 4 minutes, and I will invite Mr. Arsenault and Ms. Lapointe to share their time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Mr. Hussein, I really congratulate you on the quality of your French and how much you've learned. Madam Minister, when you talked about the new action plan, you talked about the vitality of Francophone communities and of Anglophone communities, and you recognize that they have very different needs and issues. You recognize the particularity of my riding in the north of Quebec.
Assure the prosperity of their community.
Yes, well, this was a very important question, and we took the leadership on this question. In the context of our public consultations, I sent a letter to all ministers of, that are in charge of official languages or francophonie, depending on the province and territories, to get their feedback. But particularly for Quebec, we wanted to make sure to get the feedback from the Quebec government to know what they were doing and how much they were willing to study the question of supporting the English-speaking minority in the province. And therefore, sent a letter, had good discussions with Minister Fournier, and we wanted him to, and the government of Quebec, to act upon this important subject, which are constitutional rights of the Anglophone minority. And so he sent me back his letter with some suggestions and recommendations, and we're studying all that in the context of our plan. But we know that it is extremely important for the Government of Canada to play a lead, how can I say, not only a leadership role, but to have the state of the English minority rights organizations in Quebec at heart, and also to make sure that the community is well served according to the rights that are enshrined in our Constitution. René, je suis tout à toi.
Merci. Merci. 4 minutes, c'est pas long à deux.
Yeah, 4 minutes divided by 2 is not a lot of time. I'd like to thank you for the good news and congratulations for having restored the Court Challenges program. Now I'm going to get right to the crux of the issue. Now, with respect to the specific protocol, have you had, Mr. Gauthier, meetings with organizations who were talking to you about the supplementary costs in order to ensure that additional costs, that we respect Section 23 of the Charter? Thank you very much. With respect to the public consultations, we're consulting with various organizations. I know some of the representatives are here. There is the FNCSF and other organizations, and we'll be continuing our discussions. Our objective is to make sure that provinces put money on the table and that they respect the rights of official language minority communities, and providing support with money for families and children. The discussions are ongoing. We're ready to look at different solutions. But at the present time, we are discussing with the organizations. As they say in English, time is of the essence. And in the context of our plan, we will be signing bilateral agreements, and these have to be implemented for April 2018. So we want to have these conversations and come to an agreement as soon as possible. Thank you, Madam Minister.
These 4 minutes to Michelle Rempel. Michelle, it's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions are in relation to recommendation 13 of the report from the committee, which was related to the recruitment of immigrants identified by the official language minority, as well as as the second area outlined in the government response around settlement services. My question is for the Minister of Immigration. 2 questions. What percentage of refugees that had been brought into Canada under the 2016 levels targets had a proficiency in one of Canada's official languages upon arrival in Canada? And now, 13 months later, what percentage of refugees have obtained proficiency in one of Canada's official languages since then?
In terms of the number of refugees that were brought in 2016, their proficiency in one or the other of Canada's official languages, the percentage was 5%, and that's the answer that I have for that part of the question. For the second part of the question, I'll let my officials respond.
Sorry, we don't have that data yet, and it would vary certainly depending on the age of the person when they arrived, their needs, their particular...
When do you expect to have that data?
We can get you 2016 data within the next few weeks, but it would depend. We can't get you the entire cohort because they didn't all arrive at the same time.
So I would ask, Mr. Chair, that information be tabled to the committee.
Okay.
Given that we don't have that data, and that the 2016's levels report showed a very high increase in terms of refugees coming to Canada, the recommendation here says that there is going to be a targeted effort to ensure that there is immigration to minority Francophone communities outside of Quebec. Can you give the committee a sense of what percentage of that refugee cohort were settled in minority Francophone communities outside of Quebec? With the knowledge that I'm running out of time rapidly here.
I can answer. So I think you may be aware that how the decisions are made on where the refugees are settled, in fact, we've discussed it before at this committee, is very much dependent on how they were brought in, right? If they were privately sponsored refugees, then they go to where the private sponsors are. Similarly, if they were the half and half category, the BVORs, they are also going to where the privately sponsored group is. When they're government-assisted refugees, we send them into the major centres across Canada, and from there, they are destined on, depending on what the needs of the particular province are.
Are there any specific programs or guidelines to direct refugees who do not have proficiency in one of Canada's official languages to minority Francophone communities?
No.
Okay, thank you. With regard to language proficiency services, one of the things that we've heard in Immigration Committee is that there has been a lack of language proficiency training for refugees. The reason why I was looking for the data on the amount of refugees that have, or percentage of refugees that have obtained language services, is that we know that this is something that's very low. What programs have been put in place to target the training of French to refugees, specifically government-sponsored refugees who may be resettled or, as we know now, are not targeted to refugees in minority Francophone communities outside of Quebec?
So I will absolutely reject that premise. We have funded an increased funding for language training for refugees.
So my question specifically...
if I can answer the question, Mr. Chair,
my
please.
question specifically...
Can I answer the question, please?
Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr.
I'd like to answer the question. We have, as a government, spent $76 million last year, more on settlement services, and the lion's share of that is on language training.
So
and
just now that
if I can finish
I have 15 seconds
my answer,
left, so
please.
I'd like to ask what percentage,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to finish my answer, please.
what percentage of that
I'd like to
$76
finish my
million?
answer, please, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Minister, go ahead and conclude rapidly, please.
But Mr. Chair, point of order. My question has not been answered.
I'd like to finish my answer,
like to know, I have the floor.
C'est une question de débat. It's a question of a debate.
I would like to finish my answer, please, Mr. Chair.
I would like to know what percentage of the $76 million
I know what
has
the
been
question
dedicated
was.
to
I'd like to
Francophone
finish my
training
answer, please.
services.
Mr. Rempel will hear the minister.
Not the overall
Thank you very much,
number.
Mr. Chair.
On this point.
We spent $76 million more on settlement services for refugees and all newcomers. So I think that record speaks for itself, and the record left to us by the previous government was abysmal on this part of settlement and integration. And the lion's share of that money went to language training. We dealt very quickly with even some of the shortages in the language training spots. We had an extra money for the Syrian cohort. We are absolutely proud of our record in terms of settlement funding. This year, we're putting $700 million, which is another increase in settlement and integration of refugees. So I will not accept that premise, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Madame Rempel.
I would like to note, especially in light of the fact that I believe the government would like to change the standing order so that ministers don't have as much of a role on committee, that the question that I specifically asked was what percentage of funding was directed towards Francophone language training in communities outside of Quebec. And for the record, as much as the minister was making an assertion that he answered that question, he did not. So I point out in terms of relevancy for this report, that answer was not given. Thank you.
The minister did answer some questions, and we're going out of time, so we'll pursue it. On va continuer avec Dan Vandal.
Let's continue with Dan Vandal, 4 minutes, sir. Thank you very much, Honourable Ministers, Suzanne and Johnny, for being with us. It was in Saint-Boniface in March of 2016 that the former Minister of Immigration, John McCallum, announced the launch of Mobilité Francophone, this program, after Stephen Harper's government had cut the program. So it was relaunched, and this was much appreciated by the Franco-Manitoban community throughout the province of Manitoba and indeed across Canada. In Manitoba, there are three major supports to official language minority communities: immigration, when immigrants are taken in, when they're settled, and when they're integrated. But we do need help with recruiting immigrants, that first step. I think that's one of our recommendations in our report, if I'm not mistaken, that was tabled to the government. So here's my question. Are there any discussions with other interested parties in Manitoba to see to it that we can help at the recruitment phase, that first step, to improve our percentages and reach that 4.4 target?
Member, the meeting that we had in Moncton in late March was pivotal because we all agreed provincially and federally that we should cooperate and collaborate with respect to not just the integration of settlement services, but also the promotion work so that we can attract more Francophone immigrants into Canada. And one of the ways we want to speed up that work is instead of having those meetings every 2 years, we agreed to meet once a year. So that we can coordinate more. We have been working with the groups that are engaged in the attraction, and we commit to making sure that we work with them on the promotion. And like I said, in terms of our skilled immigrant stream, the economic immigrant side, we are, as a department, we want to make sure that our promotional efforts include and expand the opportunities to attract and market to Francophone immigrants into Canada. Our pilots are also helping in that regard with, for example, the Atlantic Immigration Pilot Program, and I've spoken about the other changes, but broadly speaking, even for the attraction of international students, when I travel outside of Canada and I try to sell Canada as a great destination for international students because of our world-class universities and colleges, but also our research hubs, I make sure that I also emphasize the fact that we have vibrant Francophone institutions that support French-speaking international students, and the response, I'm hoping, will be much higher than in the past.
Excellent. And I can say that the announcement of the Mobility Francophone has helped tremendously with that goal. Question peut-être pour Ministre Joly. Peut-être que
So this question is likely for Minister Joly, and you may have touched on this already, but we know that in the 2017 budget, there's $7 billion over 10 years for quality and affordable childcare spaces. Do we have a figure, the amount that's being put aside specifically for Francophone childcare spaces? This is something I'm discussing with Minister Duclos at present. Of course, that's his file, so I would suggest that you speak to him directly as well as speaking to me. But that said, it's of great importance that across Canada we really underscore how important early childhood education is to push back on assimilation of Francophones in minority situations. Now, of course, Quebec is not a signatory to this agreement. That's why I'm not mentioning Anglophone minority communities, but this is much to be discussed in bilateral agreements involving the federal government. Thank you, Madam Minister. We have two last speakers. I would ask them to take 3 minutes only each, Bernard Généreux and then François Choquet at the very end. So, Mr. Généreux, go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, ministers. Madam Minister, you've been bashing the Conservatives since you first stepped into this room, saying that nothing took place under their government, the 10 years that they had. We managed with the Canada that we had and the money we had. Now you're managing Canada with money you don't even have. Easy enough to do a lot of politics when you just toss money right, left, and center, and money that doesn't even belong to you. So how can you explain that, given all the measures you've undertaken over the last year and a half, please watch your take good care with our vocabulary. Well, all those words are in the dictionary. Check for yourself. So you have been in power, if I can put it that way, for the last year and a half. And with all the spectacular undertakings you've got underway, how can you tell us that, how can you explain that we've got 40% more complaints? That's what we're hearing from some of our witnesses here on French language issue. And also in the National Capital Region, there's a serious problem when it comes to the priority of given to French, especially among civil servants. Most of the complaints are about that, about lack of French among civil servants. When we've got a room full of people and there's not only one that speaks English, everyone starts speaking English instead of speaking French. Are you proud of that? I mean, you've been there for a year and a half. Let's stop talking about the prior government, the Conservatives. So with all the money you've spent in the last year and a half, are you standing and telling us that you're proud of the situation? Well, I congratulate you for the work that you are carrying out in this committee. And I recognize how important the contribution of each and every member of the committee is. I think we can always do better in bilingualism in Canada. It's an ongoing challenge, always to be taken up. That's why I've said that your committee is of great importance and that all our allies supporting official language momentum are important. Now, in the last few years, there was less funding and also less importance given to official languages. Thus, there was less capacity to handle these issues, even within the government. Very recently, when I spoke at a conference to all civil servants, really high-level civil servants, I really spoke to them from the heart. I said, look, throughout our government, and especially within the civil service, we have to once again give weight to official languages and emphasize how important they are, enhance them within the civil service, within the government, and in the opposition. Of course, we can always do more to ensure that we enhance official language services and the presence of both languages. Thank you, Mr. Minister. 3 minutes, Mr. Choquette. All right, a minute and a half. Let's not squabble. Let's just deal with things. Thank you both for being here, as I said earlier. Earlier, you spoke of the Quebec Federation of Francophone School Boards and other associations. They ask for, and we recommended, indeed, a strategic alliance between them and Heritage Canada that would give more voice to the communities when it comes to deciding what to do with the funds for schooling from early childhood education through high school. Well, I mentioned earlier that this was the first time that the Federation of School Boards was consulted directly by our department within the framework of the public consultations we held. And now we're have an ongoing discussion with them for some strategic alliance and some kind of an agreement with them? Yes, I certainly hope so. A strategic agreement of some sort. That's what I'm aiming for, and I'm always ready to ensure that discussion remain ongoing and we come to good results, especially given that the action plan will be launched before the end of this year and that we need to enter into bilateral agreements with each and every province. So, of course, that's the sort of thing that takes time, but I certainly hope we reach an agreement with them as quickly as possible. Thank you. My minute and a half is over. Let's move on to Minister Hussen. Minister Hussen, you've told us that you already have a policy on immigration to increase the weight of minority communities. How is it that when the thousands of Syrians came in, nothing was done when they arrived, inasmuch as official minority communities weren't consulted throughout Canada? Communities were saying, all right, these Syrians are coming in, but we're not necessarily ready to take them in, to integrate them. In New Brunswick, for example, we heard a complaint that was filed with the Official Languages Commissioner to the effect that, no, you weren't ready, the communities weren't ready, nothing was done. And the complaint maintained that you should ensure that when refugees are sent into Canada, communities be consulted beforehand. So we've done that work. Have you set up a policy that will allow for consultation of communities when people bring in the refugees?
With Francophone communities with respect to the Syrian refugees. Of course, the report indicates one example, but to say that there was no consultation, I disagree.
So you're saying that the Commissioner is not telling us the truth, that this is an unfounded report?
As I said, that work is ongoing. We will do better in terms of integrating refugees into Francophone communities. We do fund more than 50 Francophone immigration settlement service providers, and that work is ongoing. In fact, I'm very proud of the fact that on March 30th, I signed a New Brunswick immigration agreement, which for the first time included a Francophone annex. And it's the first one which will make sure that we collaborate on the attraction, retention, and settlement of newcomers, Francophone newcomers into New Brunswick. It also recognizes the unique bilingual nature of New Brunswick. And Ontario now wants to follow suit. So as part of the upcoming Canada-Ontario immigration agreement, they also want a Francophone annex. So these are the things we're doing moving forward.
Alors, ceci met fin à notre rencontre de ce...
So this brings this morning's meeting to a close. for the members, I would like to thank you, both of you, honorable ministers, for being with us and for responding to our questions. Once again, thank you so much, and the meeting is over until we meet again.